Well, it's the last day of April, and today is probably the first truly warm day here in Utah. And seems fitting because things are heating up politically too. Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David. And yes, things are heating up. It is getting warm, it's getting beautiful, sunny, and even though I am kind of disappointed that the ski season is effectively over, I mean, there's still a few days left, if you want to go up to Snowbird, but, hey, it's beautiful weather, and it will soon be a good hiking season, and start doing some summit attempts, and just enjoy some great things. And along with that, I'll probably try to create a few videos of those attempts. I just because I think it's fun to share some of the adventures that I have with others, and also just as I've been thinking about it, this video series, even if nobody really ever watches these, hopefully at least it will be there for my kids, my grandkids, in perpetuity, so that they can see who I was as a person and that there's a record of that. For me, I look back at my family history and I'm not aware of much in the way of journals or diaries from my ancestors, and that's something that I've got a lot of friends that they do have that. They're able to look at what their ancestors were thinking and feeling, and since I suck at journaling, I really hate writing in a journal, which is funny because I actually like writing. I just don't like writing in a journal, probably because it feels so stupid to have to do. And so I've started thinking, maybe as I'm creating these videos can actually be a record for my posterity. So there is that. On the flip side, there's also the immediate need. I think there's an immediate need for anybody who believes in the principles of the Constitution, who believe in the principles of our republic, to stand up and speak up, because, oh my God, we are in a perilous time. So when I said it's heating up, it's not just the weather, it is the cold civil war. And when I say cold civil war, this is reference to what Tim Pool on his podcast has been talking about. Tim Pool has been talking about how we are already in a cold civil war. And I think that is an apt description. We are divided nearly perfectly equal between people who believe in socialism and critical race theory, and then the other side, people who believe in religious freedom and constitutional principles and the founding principles of our republic. And it is very frightening to see how half of our country no longer believes in the founding principles of our republic. Now, this could be the case that they never did. Maybe they've just been biding their time. Maybe they've just been building the framework. And that's actually pretty true. One of the things that the progressives did 100 years ago was they started laying the foundations. They said, hey, it's going to take 100 years for us to convert this country into a Marxist utopian paradise. Which, of course, is an oxymoron, as anybody who understands Marxism for the reality of what Marxism is should know that it is a total piece of poppycock. However, there's still a lot of people who believe that. they still believe that somehow magically everything's going to be this wonderful paradise when you grant authoritarian power to a centralized government. It seems like ever since Cain and Abel, there have been people like Cain who have sought for greater power, greater prestige. That power, in Cain's case, he wanted the glory, and so he killed his brother Abel so that he could have the glory, and not realizing that God didn't give a crap about whether Abel or Cain were what they were sacrificing, how they were sacrificing it, so long as they did it in the intent to honor God, whereas Cain was always sacrificing with the intent to glorify himself. And that was the whole reason why God didn't give Cain the credit for his sacrifices, and yet he did give credit to Abel. And Cain couldn't understand this. Cain was just convinced that if he could just kill Abel, then God would give the praise to him. Now, it's kind of a stupid way of thinking. However, Satan kind of preys on the stupid. And by stupid, I mean people who are gullible enough to believe that power is the important thing. So when it comes back to this day and age, you've got power. Power always corrupts, no matter what level of power. You can be, just take, for example, your local homeowners association. Have you ever noticed how even the most ridiculously small amount of power can corrupt somebody into making them into like, ooh, I've got the power. I'm the HOA president. Who freaking cares? You're supposed to be looking at that as an opportunity to serve others. And instead, you've got these idiots out there that they get all excited and hopped up over power. Look at your typical bureaucrat. A lot of bureaucrats, they let it go to their head and they start, demanding compliance for the stupidest things, and they stop using common sense, because it's not about them not having common sense. It's about the fact that they've been corrupted by power. They've got it in their head that I'm the ruler. I control things. And so you're going to bow down and do what I want. Well, that's so unnecessary. It's absolutely unnecessary for you to get corrupted by power. But most people are incapable of not being corrupted by power, because most people haven't developed a core sense of, well, for one thing, you need to have faith in God. You need to understand that there is something greater than yourself. Even if you don't want to have faith in the Christian conception of a God, at least believe that there's something greater than yourself. At least believe that there is powerful forces of nature and of the universe that we don't fully understand and we don't fully comprehend, and they are greater than us. So that is sufficient, so long as you have an understanding that there is something greater than yourself. Okay? And it's not to say that you are not important yourself. It's just you need to understand that there is something greater than yourself, so that you can be humble enough to know that it's not all about you. It's really easy to fall down into a pity party spiral. I don't know how else to describe it right now, but what I mean by that is this feeling like, oh, the whole universe is against me, right? And that's kind of how Cain was, right? Cain was feeling pity for himself. that he wasn't getting credit, right? He wanted credit. And I think a lot of times we do that. A lot of times we personify the world in a way that makes it, that we just treat everything as though we ourselves, we're the sole important being in the universe. Now, this is a natural tendency because, let's face it, we all have an ego, right? We all have an ego which tells us that we're important. And even if we constantly tell ourselves that we're not important, we still believe it. We still think that it's all about us, right? Everybody has that tendency. And so the only way to break free of that is you have to understand that there's a higher power and that there are other people and that it's important to love other people and help other people. And why are you doing that? Is it for praise? Most people, when they help others, they do it out of a desire for self-aggrandizement. That is the natural way. It is a rare person who simply wants to help because they just love people. And that's one of the reasons why politicians are so dangerous. Politicians, by their very nature, tend to be very selfish people. And why is that? Why would a politician naturally tend to be a selfish person? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the conceit of thinking that the world needs me. I'm the only one who can do this job. Look at someone like Joe Biden. I mean, he was so convinced. You can tell he's convinced himself that he's so important, that he's the one needed. And, to be fair, Donald Trump, he was the same way. He had the conceit of thinking that the world needed him, that only he could save the republic. Now, you look at Joe Biden, same thing. He's like, only me, only I can save. That's a horrible, horrible conceit. Because what it leads you to believe is that you're more important than everybody else, and therefore the rules don't need to apply to you. See, as soon as you start thinking that the rules don't apply to you because you're this unique character in history that is needed for the salvation of mankind, as soon as you start believing yourself to be in that position, you start getting into really, really dangerous territory. You start doing illegal stuff. You start doing stuff that's just wrong, morally, ethically. And so what we really need is for people to be humble servants, people who understand that it's not about them and that they're not the only one. Think about it this way. If somebody falls down on the battlefield, there should be 5 more to stand up and take their place, right? That's kind of the logic of warfare, right? That there's always more soldiers to come and fill the gaps, and that's why you typically in a large war, in a large battle, you would have massive numbers of troops, because realistically, what is a battle other than taking the position, winning the ground? Well, if you only have like 5 people on 5 people, the battle's just as important as if you have 5,000 against 5,000, right? If the whole idea is to capture the territory, right? So in the matters of spiritual warfare, it's the same thing. You need massive numbers of people on your side. And right now we do have this civil war massive numbers of people lined up on the spiritual warfare. The spiritual warfare of those who believe in Marxism, communism, socialism. They believe in critical race theory. They believe in things like, oh gosh, like the critical race theory stuff is just gross. And I will talk about that some other time. But on the flip side, you've got those that believe in limited government, the republic, having everybody is sovereign, a sovereign individual, and that the government only governs at the consent of the governed. Whereas on the other side, they believe that the people serve the government, and the government is the utopian ideal, the savior of mankind that's going to bring about this utopia. So anyways, let's get back to the point. And the point is that we need to stand up. We need to fight. We all need to voice our opinion. And that way, if anybody's taken out, 5 more will take their place. So, for example, let's say someone like Ben Shapiro. Let's say somehow he got canceled. Now, of course, he's not going to get canceled because he owns the company that he runs. However, you look at the way Parler was shut down at the beginning of this year, through a cabal of Apple, Google, Amazon. They conspired to take out a company on the internet. Now, Parler's back up, but there's shadow of them of their former self. And how do we allow for that much power to be accumulated in the hands of so few? Well, that's exactly the problem. We need to stop allowing the left to have so much power. So every single one of us, everybody who believes in righteousness and the principles of the Constitution, needs to stand up, speak truth, speak out. That way, if one person gets knocked out, 5 more stand up and start and take their place. We cannot let these Marxists take over. We cannot let these Marxists control the battlefield. We must continually go and go and go and speak our minds. This is not a live fire civil war. This is not a battle of guns. This is a battle of ideas. But it's every bit as real. They say, the old saying is, the pen is mightier than the sword. And just like that, the heat really did rise up. Okay? Like, literally, my phone suddenly stopped working and said, oh, phone needs to cool down before it can continue. So I had to actually move locations and get to where the dashboard of the car was not in the direct sun, having the sun beat down through the windshield and overheat the phone. And so here I am in a parking garage nearby so that I can continue the video. So as I was saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. The word, like if we look at the biblical use of the word, it's referring to ideas, the precepts. And in other videos, I've talked about what is the nature of God, right? God is that highest principle that you have, that you abide by. That's your guiding narrative, so to speak. And so, if your God is a God that teaches you to hate other races, I would say that that's a false God. I would say that that is an evil God. However, there are people who believe that, right? There are people that believe that, and that is their God. It's a dangerous, dangerous precept. But it's powerful. These narratives, they shape our lives. And so when I say this is a spiritual battle, a spiritual civil war, that's exactly what it is. This is not something where people are going to be using bullets or anything like that. I think this is every bit as dangerous, though, because people's souls are at stake. Now, and I know this sounds so crazy that in the 21st century, we are literally going down we're literally going down the rabbit hole of a spiritual war. But here's the thing. Just as Joe Biden said in his address to Congress this week, that now is the time of choosing. Well, I disagreed with much of what Joe Biden said in his speech. Now, admittedly, I did not watch his speech. I just caught little pieces and parts because, I didn't want to knock myself into a coma as a result of watching his speech. But the idea that we do need to choose. We can't continue this schizophrenic policy as a people and as a government, right? As the Constitution says, we the people, right? This is our government, right? As Americans, this is our government. So we need to make a choice. Are we going to continue down the path established in 1787 with the U.S. Constitution, where we have a framework of a system of government that has checks and balances and aims at slowing down the process of making decisions so as to not allow the tyrannical rule of the democracy? And I know you're probably, for anybody who doesn't understand how a democracy can be a tyranny, well, maybe you should understand the story of Socrates. Maybe you should understand that the whole reason why he was executed was because the so-called democracy of Athens, well, yes, it was a democracy, but here's the thing. That's why democracies are bad. Democracies, it's mob rule, right? When everybody gets an equal voice and everybody just goes with the crowd, guess what? You have stupid decisions like, hey, this Socrates guy, he's corrupting the youth by telling them to think for themselves and to act with responsibility. Wow, it's almost like, sounds familiar. It almost sounds like Jordan Peterson, doesn't it? How the left keeps attacking him for saying things like, clean your room, take responsibility for yourself. So, yeah, the mob, or democracy, that's a dangerous thing. It is a form of tyranny. And that's why I'm always careful to say our republic. Because we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. And why is that an important distinction? Because, like I said, in a democracy, the mob rules. In a republic, you have a system of checks and balances designed to protect the interests of the minority against the interests of the majority, while also still serving the needs of the majority. And in other words, the whole idea is, hey, let's slow everything down and try to make it so that everybody has an equal opportunity for success. It's very difficult to frame that, and that's one of the reasons why the U.S. Constitution is quite magnificent in its beauty. So in Joe Biden's speech earlier this week, he talked about how it was slow and how it kept causing problems for us because we're not able to move quickly like, Joe Biden's buddy Xi Jinping, who you know, if China wants to do something, if the Chinese Communist Party says, hey, everybody, make engine parts, everybody at the drop of a dime starts making engine parts. Which, yeah, granted, yeah. In terms of a system of organization, yeah, that's going to be a lot more efficient. So, yeah, Joe Biden's right about that. But that's not our system. Our system is designed about protecting the interests of the individual. It's mutually exclusive. If you're going to protect the interests of the individual, you have to slow down the process of government. You have to slow down the efficiency of government, which is why the reason why our system works is because the free market then takes that power. That the free market with the profit motive then goes and creates and does these amazing things. Now, you can obviously have the government direct the free market at times. You can say, hey, we need warships. And so, who wants to build warships for the government? And so the government puts out a bid, right? And then a bunch of companies say, hey, we've got these capabilities and we'll do it for this price. And then the government chooses from amongst those, right? So that system seems to work. What Biden and the leftists are trying to push for is for a system where we no longer have that private ownership of the means of production. And instead, we move to a system where the government owns it all. The government controls everything. And it's like, no, that's not a good way of doing it. What we really need is we need to slow down, and we need to think about this carefully, and we need to really carefully choose our next paths. And in this country, we are divided. We're divided between the ideas of Marx and the ideas of Locke, Montesquieu, and the Founding Fathers. It's a sad thing that we're divided like this. I mean, for a long time, I think a lot of people, we thought that spiritual war was won. That in 1989, we proved communism was a failure. The Soviet Union collapsed. The Eastern Bloc became free. It was a bit premature. I think those that believed in the forces of freedom, those that believed in the principles of the Republic, thought we had won spiritually. Thought we had won. And yet, instead of what was really happening was the communists were regrouping. The communists were laying down the foundations to take over the big prize. And what is the big prize? Well, the big prize for the communists was always the United States of America, because the United States of America is the one and only place. It's the one and only country that spells the difference between a global communist takeover and the protection of individual liberty. That's why this is so freaking important. This is life and death. But it's life and death because of the ideas. So we need to stand up for these ideas. Stop being scared. If you're watching this and you're not posting regularly, if you're not speaking up, if you're not standing up to your friends and neighbors when they say stupid crap, And if you're not standing up and saying, no, actually the Constitution is a good thing. And granted, say it in context. I mean, obviously don't be a dickhead and just like spouting this stuff all the time. No, at the right time, if the issue comes up, obviously stand up for what you believe in. Don't let the left have the high ground morally. For one thing, these leftists who are preaching this stuff like critical race theory, they're freaking racist, man. And call them out on it. Call them a racist. I know. You're going to get uninvited from the cocktail parties. You're going to be uninvited from the group. You got to stop worrying about what other people think, man. You got to stop worrying that you're going to lose friends. Because this is for your children. This is for your grandchildren. This is for our very salvation, our very republic that is going to die if we don't stand up now. This is crunch time. This is go time. Like I said, this is a spiritual war. No bullets, no fistfights, no violence. This is all about the ideas. We have to stand up for the ideas and be truthful and honest. Never should we say something that we don't believe just to fit in. That, I thought, in my ignorance, my naivete, throughout my younger years, I thought that was just the way you were supposed to be taught. I thought that's what you were supposed to do as a person, was to always speak truth. No, the truth of it is too many people care about what their friends are going to say. And they get all scared because they want to fit in. They want to be part of the in crowd. They want to be part of the cool kids. Well, the good thing for me was I was always a social reject growing up. I was never popular. I never had a ton of friends. And you know what? I was bullied as a kid. I grew up being bullied. Okay? For me, that was normal. You know what it taught me? It taught me that the cool kids are jerks. And that you shouldn't worry about what the cool kids think. Just do your own thing. Be your own person. Stand up for what you believe in. And if they give you crap, just either turn the other cheek, or if you're slightly more cheeky, like for example, when I was growing up, in high school, a lot of times, a lot of the Baptists in my high school, I grew up in Virginia as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, to be a Mormon in Virginia back in the 90s was still kind of it wasn't a popular thing, And so a lot of times you'd have, a lot of these Baptist kids, they would criticize, and make, make comments against my religion. And a lot of times my response would be, oh, yeah, we're going to be over at the temple on Wednesday to sacrifice some virgins in the basement. And say something ridiculous like that, which obviously isn't true, to basically diffuse them. Because that's the thing. If you diffuse the insanity, if you diffuse it through humor and through, witty remarks, you can actually diffuse a lot of the evils just through humor, just through speaking out, showing that you don't give a damn. Okay? Because that's what these bullies want. And yes, the leftists are bullies. They are trying to force us. They're trying to cajole us into accepting this insanity called Marxism. Well, The answer is to ridicule them back, to make jokes, to show them that it doesn't bother us, to show them that we're going to stand true to our beliefs. No matter how much social pressure they put on us, we're going to stand up and we're going to say, no. The U.S. Constitution is a divinely inspired document. The U.S. Constitution and our republic, as it was designed, is one that is aimed at creating the best conditions for individual liberty and for individual prosperity to result. Yes, there was racism, okay? But we atoned for that through the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. Okay? This whole idea that suddenly we need to, constantly flail ourselves, whip ourselves in the back for being white. Like I said, I didn't choose to be white. And honestly, I don't give a damn about your stupid critical race theory. You can go suck it, because I am who I am. God created me this way. This is not my fault. Nor is the racism or the slavery of the past. That was none of my business. I had nothing to do with it. Nor was any of the, so-called exploitation of the proletariat, as these Marxists love to talk about. They love to talk about the exploitation of the poor. I had nothing to do with that. Look, my ancestors were poor themselves. My ancestors, we've done the research, we've done the genealogy. Not a single one of my ancestors owned slaves. Not a single one of my ancestors even cared whether or not the rich people were able to own slaves. They were too busy trying to eke out a life marginally by farming. They didn't even have a concept that there was oppression going on. They were too busy just trying to make sure that their kids had food in their stomachs. So don't give me this crap about my being white is anything other than a genetic result of a genetic, result of what my DNA is. I had nothing to do with that. The amount of melanin in my skin, I can't control that. So why the hell are you trying to make my life more difficult? Why the hell are you trying to make everybody's life more difficult by making it all about race? This is not about race. We should be doing this about laws, about justice, about individual liberty, and all men, all women being treated equally as children of God. No, but Marxists can't abide. They cannot abide by the idea that we should be equal. Why? Because their whole ideology is bent. It's created on the principle of class struggle. Class struggle. That is their God, is class struggle. Well, do you think it's ever going to go away? Do you think racism, do you think the divide between rich and poor, do you think any of this will ever go away with the Marxists? Since their highest God is the idea that history is a history of class struggle, or race struggle in the case of the Marxist critical race theory. It's never going to go away. They will always be racists. They will always be classicists. Because that's all they see. That is their God. Well, I'll tell you who my God is. My God is the God of all creation. My God loves every single human being on this planet and loves them as a child, loves them as his own. My God is a God of love. My God does not tolerate racism. My God does not tolerate classicism. All are equal under God. And if you've got a problem with that, then your God is false. And you better repent now. You better find a better God. Because this spiritual war, I can promise you, the side of righteousness, the side of the true God of Israel, the God that loves us all, that we're all children of, he wins in the end. So you Marxists out there, guess what? You're going to lose. You will lose this war. Because you're following Satan. If you think for even 1 second that you're on the right side of history, you are believing in a false prophet named Karl Marx. And he has led you astray. And you need to wake up to the awful situation that you're in and repent. And with that said, I hope all of you, anybody watching this video, recognizes this, wakes up, and turns to the loving Heavenly Father that we have, even that eternal God that created us all. And I say this with all sincerity and hope that we will see brighter days soon. And I think we will. And with that, I bid you adieu again for another day. I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.